Chapter 16. Instruction. It's amazing how quickly everything can change. Before the party, my family and I had been anxiously waiting for Alice's vision. When as she finally saw the newborns approaching, we had found ourselves in a panic, nervous, uncertain, and wondering whether or not we would all make it through the battle alive. Then, of course, there was Bella, who had somehow managed to stay relatively calm throughout the evening. That is, until the wolves decided to join the fight. Now, my family and I were feeling the relief of knowing we weren't facing the army alone. For the first time since realizing what we were up against, we felt evenly matched, perhaps even with the upper hand. Bella, however, was inconsolable. I forced myself not to dwell on that fact. I was having a difficult enough time as it was, trying not to tear Jacob limb from limb. Bella begged and pleaded with him to stay out of the fight, and Jacob was enjoying every minute of it.
"Wait, Jake,"
she shouted as the pack turned to leave.
"Please, don't do this."
I sighed. My arm was around Bella's waist, my fingers running lightly through her hair. She hadn't even acknowledged my presence.
"Don't be ridiculous, Bella," Jacob told her, still laughing at her fears. "You're giving me a much better gift than the one I gave you."
"No!"
she yelled again, her eyes brimming with tears.
"And you,"
he added, glancing at me for a split second before returning his eyes to Bella.
"Thought you were going to be the hero again, right? No wonder you didn't want to tell us about these new bloodsuckers. You wanted the glory all to yourself."
A low snarl, hopefully too quiet for Bella to hear, ripped through my throat. All it did was make him smile even wider.
Now, don't forget your manners. This is still a party, after all."
My eyes widened, and I felt Jasper at my side.
"Relax, Edward. He's not worth it."
I took a deep breath and tried to focus on the waves of calm he sent directly to me. Jacob thought, his eyes fixed on Bella.
"Who do you think she's going to worry about more? Suppose it's not really even a question. She was ready to watch you run off and fight, but look at her now, begging me to stay."
I was glad in that moment that Bella wasn't paying me any attention, because all of my pretenses fell away. I glared at him, eyes full of anger and fire. I hated that I was unsure whether I was more furious at Jacob for his taunting, or at myself for wondering if what he was saying was true.
"This is going to be some fight,"
he added with a smirk, then ran off to join the rest of his mangy companions, and I was left to console Bella, my Bella, who seemed far more worried about his safety than I was prepared for. Wasn't she ready to let me kill him less than an hour ago? "Bella, my love," I whispered, nuzzling into her hair. "I know you're upset, but people are starting to notice the commotion." She shut her eyes tightly, taking in 3 deep, steady breaths.
"You're right," she finally sighed. "I'm sorry."
"Don't apologize. I'm sorry you're unhappy. I only wish there was something I could do to fix it."
"Tell them not to fight,"
she said, burying her head into my shoulder. I gritted my teeth, wishing there was some way I could silence the jealousy I felt at her concern for that dog. Then, like always, she found a way to give me exactly what I needed.
"Don't you fight either," she added. "None of you fight. Let's just leave."
All of my loathsome feelings of anger and jealousy faded away, and I actually caught myself laughing. "Now why didn't I think of that?" I teased.
"Don't joke,"
she snapped, and despite of myself I laughed again at her indignation. "I'm sorry. That was insensitive of me. I just wish it was that simple. If running away would do us any good, I would whisk you away the moment this ridiculous party was over."
"Who says we have to wait until the party's over?"
she asked, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. I pulled her tightly into my arms. "No one is going to get hurt, Bella. We're going to end this war before it begins, now that we have so much help. Before it was—" I paused, not wanting to upset her, but needing to understand the necessity of us accepting the wolves' help. Uncertain. The only downside of their being involved is this means Alice's sight is gone. Really, though, there wasn't much she could see anyway, because of the nature of the newborns. We aren't losing anything. We have only the benefit of this alliance, as unconventional as it might be. Her brow pulled together, as if she were concentrating very hard on what I had said, weighing the pros and cons. Eventually, she must have come to some sort of acceptance, though I doubted she would ever be as happy with the decision as the rest of us were.
"No one is going to get hurt?"
she repeated. "It'll be over so fast, you won't have time to worry about any of us." Maybe it was selfish, or foolish, or perhaps a bit of both, but I was hoping she would argue with me. A very juvenile side of me wanted her to say, "Of course I'm going to worry about you." Instead, she simply rolled her eyes at me and rejoined the party. As she drifted back into the crowd, I followed after her closely, surprised at how quickly the charade resumed. If I didn't know her better, I would have thought she loved playing the hostess. Alice was thrilled the party lasted for several more hours, though I would have preferred to have Bella to myself for a while before meeting with the wolves. I was thrilled to have their help, but it was still going to be a difficult night. When the last of Bella's friends had finally left, we all gathered around the door. Every thought was now focused on the upcoming training session. Every mind except Alice's. I wasn't surprised to hear her basking in post-party bliss.
"Well, all things considered, I think it went well," she said. "Everyone had fun. I could tell they were all positively entranced by the decor."
As I listened to her chatter on about the success of the party, as cheerful as ever, I realized that she wasn't the only one filled with euphoria. Every member of my family was smiling. It was a welcome relief. After the weeks we had spent worrying, knowing we were no longer fighting alone had brightened everyone's spirits. Still, as the minutes ticked by, I began to feel the weight of everything heavy on my shoulders. The thought of having the wolves observe our training session had me feeling quite unsettled. The rest of my family didn't seem to mind the idea, but they also weren't the ones who would have to play the role of translator. While Jacob was beside himself with excitement, I had heard the distrust in his friends' minds. There was no way they were joining us tonight in their human forms. As Alice continued praising her party, the rest of us remained quiet, thinking about the upcoming events. Eventually, Emmett broke the silence, making Bella jump beside me. "All right, the humans are gone. Present company excluded," he added, grinning at Bella. "Time to get the real party started." We all breathed a collective sigh, not quite as enthusiastic as Emmett seemed to be, though I was relieved the tension seemed to be lifting. "Emmett is right," Carlyle said, smiling. He was generally calm for the first time in weeks. "We should begin our preparations." "What's to prepare?" Emmett asked. "Jasper knows how to kill these guys. He'll teach us everything he knows, and those idiot dogs are just going to sit there and watch, pretending they aren't scared to death of us. Like I said, sounds like a party to me."
"I wish you wouldn't act like this was some big game,"
Bella said, and everyone turned to stare at her. She blushed, her eyes widening like she was surprised she had said the words out loud.
"I'm sorry,"
she added in a whisper.
"I just don't know why you're making jokes when people could really get hurt."
"People?" I smiled as every mind in the room thought the same word at the same time. My Bella, still thinking of all her monsters as nothing more than regular people. "Bella," Carlyle said gently, "I assure you we will all be very well prepared. This alliance has made us strong, and our training is merely a precaution. It's important to gain the greatest possible advantage, though I feel certain that with our numbers the way they stand now, we could go into this fight tonight without any preparations at all, and still be victorious."
"I wish I was as confident as you."
"Have you considered letting her accompany us tonight?" Carlyle asked me, and I shook my head infinitesimally. "It might actually be good for her. She should see why our tactics and our powers give us such an advantage."
"Silly Bella,"
Alice said, thankfully interrupting Carlyle and my silent conversation.
"I know I can't see past those stupid hairball friends of yours, but there's really nothing to worry about."
She shot Jasper a meaningful look, and he turned to Bella, concentrating every ounce of calm he could muster in her direction. I saw her posture relax for a moment, before her mind took over again.
"I just don't understand why nobody seems at all worried anymore. You're really putting that much faith in the wolves? I thought you guys were mortal enemies. Now you want to fight with them?"
"Oh, come on, Bella," Emmett laughed. "Why should you be the only one who gets to fight the werewolves? It's our turn now." She scowled at him, and I had to stop myself from laughing.
"Don't worry about a thing, dear," Esme said.
kissing her forehead in a very motherly gesture that made my heart soar. I loved to see how deeply Esme cared for Bella.
Everything will be perfectly fine, and this mess will be over before you know it. Then we can finally get back to the happy task of officially welcoming you into the family,"
she added, with an almost imperceptible wink in my direction. "Edward," Carlyle said, "we don't have much time. You need to get Bella home. We don't want Charlie worrying about her." Alice smiled angelically, her thoughts drifting conveniently back to the party. She was trying to keep something from me, and at the moment I didn't have time to worry about what it was. "Carlyle's right," I said. "It's late, and I'm sure Bella is exhausted." Bella let out a sound like an aggravated sigh, and her posture tensed. I didn't think my comment had been insulting, but she looked like she was upset. As we walked out the door, my family continued to offer her reassurance that everything would go smoothly, but Bella's anxiety never dissipated. She was silent when I opened the car door for her, and didn't give me even the smallest of smiles when I reached out to her in the car. I stroked the back of her hand soothingly, trying to coax something out of her. It was once again driving me mad that I couldn't hear where her thoughts had taken her. Was her worried mind thinking of me, my family, Jacob?
"That had to be the longest party in the history of the world," she mumbled.
"It's over now," I said softly, my fingers now tracing up her arm. I hoped the evening had worn her out enough to help her get a restful night's sleep, even without me there to hum her lullaby. I didn't know how long we were going to be out tonight, but it seemed safe to assume I wouldn't be back before dawn. This would be the first night we had spent apart in a very long time.
"You're taking me with you tonight,"
she said finally, her voice low, trying to find her confidence. "Bella, you're worn out." I wasn't surprised she was suggesting coming with us, but I didn't expect her to push the issue very far. Her eyes were half closed.
"You think I could sleep?"
My lips pressed together in a tight line. Of course she could sleep, if she'd just let herself relax for a moment. Instead, she was trying to find a reason to join the very unconventional assembly of vampires and werewolves, putting herself right in the middle of harm's way, should tempers escalate. I didn't want her there, in the midst of the unknown. I hoped things would remain peaceful, but it was quite possible that the wolves could get angry when they saw firsthand what we were capable of. Some of them might attack out of frustration or instinct. I usually found her stubbornness endearing, but I really didn't have the time to rationalize with her. This meant she was probably going to get her way. "This is an experiment," I explained. "I'm not sure if it'll be possible for us all to cooperate. I don't want you in the middle of that." The moment I said it, I realized my mistake. I was, once again, trying to look out for her safety, something she placed virtually no value on. But now all I did was make her more fearful that one of us was going to get hurt.
"If you won't take me, I'll call Jacob."
Her voice was flat, her face expressionless, though she must have known what her words would do to me. My grip tightened on the wheel as I realized I was powerless. Jacob would give her whatever she asked for, take her anywhere she wanted to go, no matter how dangerous. It wasn't that I thought he didn't care about her, but rather he was arrogant enough to believe nothing could harm her while he was around. I pulled into Bella's driveway without saying a word. We both knew she had won.
"See you upstairs,"
she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. I watched until she was inside, then went to wait for her upstairs. I couldn't help but laugh, listening to her drag Charlie to bed. Then she moved quickly on to her nightly routine. It always amazed me how those brief moments without her, when I knew she was in the room next to me, dragged on, and how when she finally joined me in her room, everything in my world felt right again. She always looked at me with the oddest mixture of relief and elation, like she still couldn't believe I was sitting in her rocking chair waiting for her, though I had been here every night since we'd returned home from Italy. I opened my arms, hoping she would join me. She was tired enough that I might be able to rock her to sleep.
"Come here,"
she said, smiling and pulling me toward the bed instead. Her hands pressed against my chest, and before I knew it, she was curled up in my arms, sighing. I wrapped her quilt around her to warm her up, wishing she would simply drift off to sleep. The moment her breathing started to slow, though, I felt her tense again. I hated that she was fighting so hard to stay awake, when there was nothing to be accomplished by her coming with us. She was looking for reassurance that no one was in any danger, but watching us train wouldn't truly give her that. She would just have to trust us. "Please relax," I said softly, stroking her hair.
"Sure."
"This is going to work, Bella. I can feel it." I could feel the frustration and doubt emanating from her, and I struggled for words that could put her mind at ease. "Listen to me, Bella," I pleaded. "This is going to be easy. The newborns will be completely taken by surprise. They'll have no more idea that werewolves even exist than you did. I've seen how they act in a group, the way Jasper remembers. I truly believe the wolves' hunting techniques will work flawlessly against them, and with them divided and confused, there won't be enough for the rest of us to do. Someone may have to sit out."
"Piece of cake,"
she muttered sarcastically. "Shh," I breathed, my fingers brushing against her cheek, wishing I could take her fears away. "You'll see. Don't worry now." I hummed her lullaby, but her posture told me she was determined not to fall asleep. Her head was pressed against my chest, but there was too much tension in her shoulders. I really was fighting a losing battle. Determined to get to the field before the wolves, I knew we were running out of time. I gently pushed Bella up until she was sitting beside me. "Are you sure you don't want to stay here and sleep?" I asked uselessly. When she scowled at me, I sighed, defeated, and carried her out of the window. With the world rushing by us as we ran, it was easy to forget that we were running towards something very important. I was so focused on the way Bella's arms wrapped around me, how she was so much more at ease than she used to be, flying through the forest with me. I nearly forgot my worries from earlier. When we reached the clearing, I heard Emmett laughing as Jasper and Alice chased each other around. Alice looked like a pouncing kitten. Although I knew Jasper was fast enough to outrun her, it was clear he was having more fun by being caught. I smiled at Bella as I sat her down, happy for the first time that she was with us. Maybe the light-hearted atmosphere was all she needed to stop her worrying about everything. She didn't smile back at me, and I noticed her eyes weren't focused on anything. She was lost in thought, and of course I was left completely baffled.
"You know what I think?"
she asked. I couldn't stop the laugh from escaping. "No?" I teased. "What do you think?" I expected her to laugh with me, but she continued almost tonelessly. She was having trouble wrapping her mind around whatever she was thinking.
"I think it's all connected. Not just the two, but all three."
"You've lost me."
3 bad things have happened since you came back. The newborns in Seattle, the stranger in my room, and first of all, Victoria came looking for me."
My fist clenched at hearing Victoria's name. It bothered me how confident Bella was that it had been her. I hadn't been very good at tracking Victoria, but the idea that she had been right here, under all of our noses, without us knowing, was horrifying to me. "Why do you think so?" I asked.
"Because I agree with Jasper. The Volturi love their rules. They would probably do a better job anyway. Remember when you were tracking Victoria last year?"
"Yes." I couldn't keep the pain out of my expression. Somehow, Bella managed to talk about my time away without so much as flinching. Every time I thought about it, it caused me physical pain. I wasn't very good at it, I admitted, hoping she wouldn't press the subject any further. There had been times when I was tracking her where I found myself hoping she would find me first and put me out of my misery.
"Alice said you were in Texas. Did you follow her there?"
"Yes." Bella was putting pieces together that my family and I had never really considered. Had Victoria been inspired by the gruesome history in Texas and decided to try her hand at army making? It was sick and terrible to consider, but I had a feeling we had never really gotten a true idea of what Victoria was capable of.
"See?"
Bella continued, her voice strangely excited as she realized she might be onto something.
"She could have gotten the idea from there, but she doesn't know what she's doing, so the newborns are out of control."
It still didn't explain how one of them was able to get into Bella's room without Alice seeing. Only Aro knows exactly how Alice's visions work.
"Aro would know best. But wouldn't Tanya and Irina and the rest of the family in Denali know enough? Laurent lived with them for so long, and if he was still friendly enough with Victoria to be doing her favors, why wouldn't he also tell her everything he knew?
Anxiety was starting to take over my senses as I contemplated her being in Bella's room, but I quickly reminded myself, no matter how horrid a tracker I was, I would have known if she had been there. "It wasn't Victoria in your room," I promised her.
She can't make new friends? Think about it, Edward. If it is Victoria doing this in Seattle, she's made lots of new friends. She's created them.
I didn't want her to be right. I didn't want to think Victoria had been so close that if she wanted to kill Bella that night, she could have sent someone to do it without any of us knowing. My brothers often teased me about my unwillingness to leave Bella's side for even a short time. This was why. Every moment of every day, I was completely, painfully aware of how easily I could lose her. Emmett and Jasper had never had to worry about losing Rose or Alice. The concept of eternity with their perfect partners was a given, an irrefutable fact. Going into this fight, especially before we gained the help of the wolves, was probably the first time either of them had considered what their existence would be like if they were forced to continue it alone. It was a fear I lived with constantly. It's possible," I finally said, when I noticed Bella staring up at me expectantly. "I still think the Volturi are most likely, but your theory, there's something there. Victoria's personality. Your theory suits her personality perfectly. It made sense that she would use others to get what she wants, anything to keep herself out of harm's way. It was something I understood about her a long time ago, back when she had sent Laurent to Forks, supposedly to check whether or not Bella was still protected. She must have known that if he'd found her, he would kill her. Her blood, though not as potent to others as it was to me, still would have been too much for him to resist. It was clear she wanted results without having to put herself in any danger, though before Bella's theory, I hadn't thought even Victoria would go to such extreme lengths as to create an army to do her dirty work. "She's shown a remarkable gift for self-preservation from the start," I said. "Maybe it's a talent of hers. In any case, this plot would put her in no danger at all from us, if she sits safely behind and lets the newborn wreak their havoc here. And maybe little danger from the Volturi either. Perhaps she's counting on us to win, in the end, though certainly not without heavy casualties on our side, but no survivors from her little army to bear witness against her. In fact, if there were survivors, I'd bet she was planning to destroy them herself." The only mystery that remained, if the pieces really did connect in the way they appeared to, was who had been in Bella's room. Still, she'd have to have at least one friend who was a bit more mature. No fresh-made newborn left your father alive. I stopped myself when I heard her breath catch, angry at myself for upsetting her. I smiled, quickly changing the subject. "Definitely possible regardless. We've got to be prepared for anything until we know for sure." I grinned at her, quite proud of Bella, even if I didn't like the answers she'd come up with. "You're very perceptive today. It's impressive."
"Maybe I'm just reacting to this place,"
she said, suddenly second-guessing herself. She looked around warily, and when she continued, her voice was shaking.
"It makes me feel like she's close by, like she sees me now."
Every muscle in my body tensed at the idea. "She'll never touch you, Bella," I promised, instinctively searching the shadows for signs of any uninvited guests. It was unsettling, having to question whether or not we were alone. There was a time when I thought our family was almost impenetrable. Between Alice seeing the moment anyone decided to come near us, and me hearing them when they were close enough to worry about, it seemed like we were invincible. Even Jasper, tasting a change in the atmosphere, was helpful for keeping out those who wanted to harm us. Not this time, though. Whoever was in Bella's room had found a way around all of us, and for that, I would have given anything to end this nightmare here and now. Yet what I wouldn't give to have her that close, I breathed, more to myself than Bella. Victoria, and anyone else who ever thought of hurting you, to have a chance to end this myself, to finish it with my own hands this time. I felt Bella's grip tighten, her fingers locking with mine, and I pulled her close as we closed the small gap between us and my family. Jasper's playfulness had vanished, and he was now getting ready, running drills in his head like he was a boot camp instructor. Esme and Carlyle were standing together, whispering reassurances and words of love to each other. Emmett was running laps around the field, while Rosalie rolled her eyes. Alice was standing anxiously on her own, fidgeting, her eyes unfocused but searching.
"Well, at least we know they're not bailing on us,"
she was thinking sourly.
"Can't see anything. Completely frustrating. Stupid wolves are probably dragging their tails here right now. Can't believe we agreed to this." "Is something wrong with Alice?"
Bella asked. Yes, definitely perceptive tonight, I thought, laughing quietly. The werewolves are on their way, so she can't see anything that will happen now. It makes her uncomfortable to be blind.
"Like you never complain about not being able to hear Bella. Just imagine if everyone suddenly went silent on you."
Alice looked up, meeting my eyes, and stuck her tongue out at me. If I thought she was genuinely upset, I would have felt more sorry for her, but even though she was frustrated, I knew how grateful she was that we weren't fighting alone. "Hey, Edward," Emmett said, casting a sideways glance at Bella. "There's just no leaving her behind, is there? So tell me, how does it feel having Bella make all your decisions for you?" Emmett absolutely loved taunting me when there was nothing I could do or say about it. "Hey, Bella," he grinned. "Is he going to let you practice too?" "Please, Emmett, don't give her any ideas." Carlyle appeared beside me, looking relaxed, but I could hear a bit of concern playing around in his mind. He trusted the wolves more than the rest of us, but it was still hard for him to invite a group of unstable creatures to interact with his family, especially when the focus of the evening was fighting. "When will our guest arrive?" he asked, a warm smile locked firmly onto his face. I closed my eyes and tried to focus. Listening to the wolves was like hearing an echo. One mind spoke, then the words resonated through the rest of the pack. It was a harmony of voices, yet each had their own distinct timbre. It was fascinating, and I was sure it was also a very useful form of communication. For me, though, it was positively deafening. As much as I disliked Jacob, and didn't particularly enjoy hearing him or his juvenile complaints, I was the most familiar with his voice, and concentrating on him helped me to block out the others. "Those bloodsuckers have no idea what we're capable of. We don't need training to kill a group of stinking vampires. We were made for this." I sighed. Jacob's arrogance knew no limits. "About a minute and a half," I estimated. The closer they got, their voices grew even louder and more difficult to distinguish. It was going to be a long night. "But I'm going to have to translate," I added. "They don't trust us enough to use their human forms." I suspected as much. "Is Bella comfortable being here with them in their true forms?" I shrugged my shoulders once, and tried not to look surprised when he referred to the wolves' bodies as their true forms. It was interesting that Carlyle regarded them as wolves more than humans. Maybe it was part of his acceptance of them. When they were changed, he saw their true nature, the time when they were most themselves, and considered their human lives the act they were forced to put on. "This is hard for them," Carlyle continued, his voice gentle and compassionate. "I'm grateful they're coming at all."
"They're coming as wolves?"
Bella asked, her eyes wide. I nodded slowly, noting the way her breathing sped up. Carlyle smiled. "I guess that answers my question." For all of Bella's time hanging out with the wolves, I suppose she really hadn't spent much time with them when they weren't human. It made sense that she would be nervous around them all at once. The pack had almost arrived, and it was getting very difficult to ignore them. Their unspoken conversation had grown to almost a constant chatter that was enough to make anyone crazy. In a strange way, I found myself empathizing with them. I knew all too well how unpleasant it could be not to be able to silence the voices in your head. I couldn't deny that the push and pull dynamic of their minds was intriguing, though. Their thoughts were shared, and they were definitely a collective spirit, a clear camaraderie, yet they were all still very distinct in their own entities. Some of them remained mostly silent, while others were slightly more opinionated. I wondered if this distinction had anything to do with how long they had been a part of the pack. "Still can't believe we're helping them. Whose bright idea was this again? Aw, guys, where's your fighting spirit? We finally get to rip some vampires apart."
Why are we watching them train? How hard do they think this army is to kill? Don't they know this is why we exist? I took a deep breath in, struggling, concentrating, desperate to pick out each individual voice. At the very least, I needed to know Sam's, since he would be leading the pack, and would likely be the only voice I was meant to translate. The others were, to the rest of my family, silent observers. Do they all have powers, or is it just the mind reader and the fortune teller? Guys, this is messed up. What are we doing joining them in a training session? Quill's right. We were made for this. Jacob, this must be driving you nuts. How can you stand to watch her with him like that? Just like that, I knew they were close enough to see us. 3 wolves stepped out from the shadows. They were staring at Bella, and even in their wolf forms, I could see the confusion, the utter revulsion in their eyes. She doesn't even care, does she? Totally disgusting. Can't she smell that? I rolled my eyes. Then, amid the stream of insults that followed, I heard something that caught me by surprise. Their numbers were greater than I had previously wanted to admit. Are you sure about this? Do we really want them knowing how many have changed? This is our best-kept secret. Man, well, what do you expect? Some of us not to fight? No way am I staying out of this. There's no point in holding back. They'll know soon enough. Prepare yourselves. They've been holding out on us, I said, nearly grinning. I was starting to be able to distinguish their voices from one another, and if my count was correct, there were at least 8 wolves. The fight would be over before the newborns even realized it started.
What do you mean?
Alice asked, irritated that I knew something before she did. Shh, I said, needing every bit of focus as the wolves stepped into view. The sight of the wolves, all 10 of them, surprised everyone. Jasper, Emmett, even Carlyle, who hadn't expressed one moment of nervousness until that moment, all suddenly had the exact same thought. Edward, guard Bella. Hearing their trepidation made me instantly want to stand beside them, but with Bella clutching my hand beside me, I knew without a doubt where I belonged. Damn, Emmett breathed, eyes wide as he truly took it all in. Did you ever see anything like it?
Are we sure this is safe?
Esme thought, glancing quickly around the circle of her children, her eyes finally resting on Rosalie. Rose, seeing Esme's fear, tried her best to smile reassuringly.
What is it?
Bella asked, squinting into the darkness.
I can't see.
The pack has grown. I wanted to gauge Bella's reaction, but the pack was muttering amongst themselves again, and I once again struggled to hear Sam's voice. So what now? This is such a waste of time. Would you guys chill? This is cool, like partying with the enemy cool.
Jake, check it out. Your girlfriend's holding on to that leech pretty tight.
Shut up, Leah. Fascinating, I whispered, unable to control my surprise. I guess I had always assumed it was only the males who carried the gene. The fact that there was a female among them was something I never could have foreseen.
You shut up, Jake. You know you're totally jealous.
Luke who's talking about jealousy. Think about Sam much?
Shut up!
Leah's voice was almost as raking as Jacob's, and it was clear I was going to be hearing more out of both of them than I really cared to. I didn't completely understand what happened next, but something in Leah's tone changed. Although I still didn't fully understand the inner working of the packed mind, somehow I knew the next thing I heard was something she was trying to hide from the rest of the wolves. Of course, there was really no way for her to truly hide her thoughts, but what she was thinking now was more like flashes of images rather than words. She was moving through them so quickly, I was only able to catch glimpses. There was Sam, and I could feel, rather than hear, her love for him. I could tell she had been his, some time long ago, but his heart belonged to someone else now. The girl Leah saw was someone I had caught glimpses of in Sam's mind, but it was only through Leah that I had a name to put with a face. Emily. Leave it alone, Leah. Just for this one night. We've got work to do. Jacob's voice startled me, and I realized I had been listening with rampant attention to the strange love story playing through Leah's mind. She had lost Sam, and it haunted her.
You honestly think I can control it, you idiot? She spat back at him. I'd love to shut it off, really. Maybe if I was spending my time thinking about something a little more interesting, like Embry's little conundrum.
Her voice was almost smug now, like she was thrilled to bring up something that was clearly taboo. Now's not the time, Leah. It's none of your business anyway.
Well, it's somebody's business.
Leah's thoughts changed back to their previous tone. I was once again seeing flashes, and then hearing memories as well. Apparently, there was some question as to which member of the tribe had fathered Embry, and it didn't take long to realize that this issue was causing quite a bit of drama throughout the pack. Jacob and Leah's argument was quickly joined by a chorus of voices.
Is anyone ever going to learn to mind their own business around here? You say that like it's even possible. Just because we know something doesn't mean we have to discuss it all the time. Oh, come on, there hasn't been a scandal this big since Sam imprinted on Emily. Enough, not another word.
In an instant, every voice disappeared. It startled me how quickly Sam's order was obeyed. I knew as the Alpha his word was final, but I hadn't expected the complete and total silence. I guess that was one advantage to having their thoughts joined. Now that Sam's voice was the only one I could hear, he was even clearer than before. He had silenced the pack out of frustration, but there was another emotion there, hiding just under the surface. His mind drifted to his love, his Emily, and I was suddenly seeing her through his eyes, the way he saw her. The complete and pure adoration made me feel voyeuristic in a way I never had before. She belonged to him so completely. It felt wrong that I should even be allowed to see her through the medium of his mind. I had heard the wolves discuss imprinting before, but it wasn't until that moment that I understood it. Edward, I'm counting on you to tell me if any of them so much as thinks of attacking one of us. My mind struggled to focus on Carlyle's voice. I had found myself distracted, lost in the minds of the wolves for the second time. I felt instantly guilty at my inability to concentrate on the matter at hand. Carlyle was looking to me to foresee any problems that might arise, though unless Sam lifted his gag order, I was going to be just as blind as Alice. "Welcome," Carlyle said to Sam, outwardly showing nothing but confidence. "Thank you," Sam thought, his deep eyes staring meaningfully into mine. I repeated his words aloud, trying to keep my voice steady as the eyes of the pack and my family looked on. As I spoke Sam's words, I heard him command the pack once more. "I believe it is important for you all to be able to communicate with each other during this exercise, but if there is even one more moment of argument, I will silence all of you for the remainder of the evening. We are here to learn. Is that understood?" "Yes." One voice, one mind. It was comforting, yet at the same time confusing. I had never experienced anything like it. The voices I was used to hearing were incessantly self-indulgent, every human for himself. The pack mentality, as they answered their Alpha's orders, was a unity I had never thought I would hear. "We will watch and listen, but no more," Sam continued, now confident in my ability to translate. He was looking straight at Carlyle. "That is the most we can ask of our self-control." "That is more than enough," Carlyle said. "My son Jasper has experience in this area. He will teach us how they fight, how they can be defeated. I am sure you can apply this to your own hunting style." "They are different than you?" It was difficult to keep my voice calm, repeating such an offensive statement, but I could hear that there was no malice in Sam's voice. He was merely trying to understand the nature of the creatures he was sending his pack to fight. Carlyle nodded. "They are all very new, only months old to this life, children in a way. They will have no skill or strategy, only brute strength." There was a murmur through the minds of the wolves, far too many thoughts at once for me to pick up anything significant. There was some apprehension at this new information, though their collective voice still sounded mostly excited. "Tonight their numbers stand at 20, Carlyle continued. 10 for us, 10 for you. It shouldn't be difficult. The numbers may go down. The new ones fight amongst themselves." "Killing each other off? Those stupid vamps are doing our job for us. Excellent. Aw, we're not going to get to have any fun at all." "Quiet, please." Sam's voice didn't have the same commanding tone as it had before, perhaps a suggestion more than an order. Still, the pack settled down, and I was able to focus on Sam again. "We are willing to take on more than our share if necessary." I fought back the growl that was threatening to follow. The rumblings of enthusiastic agreement seemed to suggest the wolves considered themselves stronger fighters than us. Carlyle must have noticed the edge in my voice. "Calm, Edward. He meant no offense. They're only being helpful." If only Carlyle could hear what I was hearing. "Do you know when and how they will arrive?" "They'll come across the mountains in 4 days, in the late morning.
As they approach, Alice will help us intercept their path. Thank you for the information. We will watch. As I translated Sam's words, he added as a warning to the pack, We will watch quietly and respectfully, and perhaps from a less intimidating vantage point. There was a groan as the wolves, one by one, laid themselves down. So embarrassing. Feel like a pet dog. Is this necessary, Sam? Sam growled, a guttural sound rather than a verbal answer, and the voices ceased once more. There was a strangely quiet moment. Every voice in every mind, both vampire and werewolf, was silent. It was as if we were all taking one much-needed breath before we began. With a deep sigh, Jasper finally broke the silence, taking a careful step forward. "Are the puppies on their best behavior?" he asked, his eyes locking with mine for a moment. He was trying to be funny, not wanting to let his nerves show, but I knew this was going to be difficult for him. I nodded, confident that Sam would keep his pack in order, and watched as Jasper acted against every instinct he had within him, and turned his back on his mortal enemies. "I can't believe I'm doing this," he thought with a groan. "Carlyle's right," he said, facing my family. "They'll fight like children. The two most important things you'll need to remember are, first, don't let them get their arms around you, and second, don't go for the obvious kill. That's all they're prepared for. As long as you come at them from the side, and keep moving, they'll be too confused to respond effectively. Emmett?" "Gladly," he thought, grinning from ear to ear. "I'm ready to show these wolves exactly how fast and strong we are." Jasper signaled for Emmett to come forward. He wanted everyone to have a proper view. "Okay, Emmett first. He's the best example of a newborn attack." "Thanks, bro. I'll try not to break anything." Jasper smiled. "What I mean is, Emmett is relying on his strength. He's very straightforward about the attack. The newborns won't be trying anything subtle either." "I'll show you subtle," Emmett added dryly. "Just go for the obvious kill, Emmett," Jasper said, baiting him. "He's really asking for it now. Permission to pummel at will." I stifled a laugh. "Okay, Emmett, try to catch me." Without a thought, exactly as Jasper had predicted, Emmett lurched forward. He hurled himself toward Jasper like a bullet out of a gun. No planning, no direction. The perfect example of a newborn attack. We couldn't have scripted a better fight. Emmett was fumbling and grabbing, his hands clenching around air, but Jasper always knew exactly what his next move would be. He easily dodged every hit, because Emmett was always coming straight toward him. "Damn it!" he silently screamed, over and over. It was all meant to be an exercise, and nothing more, but I could hear the real frustration in Emmett's mind. His pride was always his greatest fault, and I actually felt myself tensing as the fight went on. I watched as he threw himself at Jasper time and again, never pausing, never thinking. "I think he's had enough," Jasper thought, calculating for the briefest moment before coming up behind Emmett, teeth bared. "Damn it!" he yelled, this time out loud. "They're fast. Faster than I'd like them to be. Interesting tactics. Why wouldn't he plan his next move? Are they all that big?" "Again!" Emmett growled, forgetting himself, forgetting what this was all about. "It's my turn," I said, stepping forward. I needed Emmett to snap out of it. Suddenly, I felt Bella's fingers grip mine, pulling me back toward her. Guiltily, I realized I had forgotten she was there. It was the first moment since I had known her that her presence wasn't the strongest force around me. There was an anxious feeling in the air, excited and determined, and it was permeating everything. "In a minute," Jasper told me. "I want to show Bella something first." I took a careful step back, focusing on Bella again, my perfect, fragile love, standing in a field, watching monsters learn how to fight. It was despicable that I had forgotten her presence for even a moment. Jasper motioned for Alice to come forward. "I know you're worried about her," he told Bella. "I want to show you why that's not necessary." Bella's eyes widened as she watched Jasper lunge toward Alice. She closed her eyes and smiled.
Left attack first,"
she thought, taking a deliberate step forward.
"A little predictable."
I grinned, glad Alice was able to have some fun today.
"What'll it be next? Ah, I see."
She took another step, and Jasper passed her the space she had just been standing in.
Missed me,
she thought, as he grasped the air.
Missed me again.
Unlike Emmett, Jasper was planning his moves strategically, but Alice saw every choice he made, and was always a step ahead. The two were laughing, thoroughly enjoying their dance. Finally, Alice decided to end the exercise on her terms. Her eyes lifted for a split second, and she smiled as she jumped into the air, landing on top of Jasper's shoulders.
Gotcha,
she said, kissing him. Jasper laughed, his previous anxiety gone. Alice had an amazing power over him. He had all but forgotten the wolves were watching. You truly are a terrifying little monster, he teased. That could be inconvenient. How does she do that? Don't understand it. More powerful than I had expected. Then, amid the banter and frustration, I heard Jacob's voice above them all. Thought she was supposed to be powerless when we were around, he complained. The wolf made a valid point. I had expected Alice to be blind the entire evening, yet here she was, using her power against Jasper. I looked at Alice, my eyes questioning, and she grinned at me.
The wolves aren't really involved yet. They're only observing, not making any decisions. As soon as I realized what that meant, I asked Jasper to let me show off a bit.
It's good for them to learn some respect, I agreed, smiling as the irritation continued to resonate through the pack. You ready, Edward? Jasper asked, a sly look in his eyes. I was always his favorite opponent in any game. He loved trying to trick me with his mind, thinking moves he wasn't intending on making, planning and then changing his mind at the last second. We were fairly evenly matched, as far as strength was concerned. I had the upper hand in speed, but he was a far more experienced fighter than I was. Suffice it to say, I was glad I never had to fight him in earnest, because the outcome could truly go either way. My turn, I announced, giving Bella's hand an extra squeeze before releasing it. I could tell she was uncomfortable watching me fight, even though it was simply practice. I worried that she wouldn't be able to handle it when I left for the real fight. I could imagine her scheming, trying to come along, though of course there was nothing she could do to help us. I hadn't given much thought to where she would be during the actual fight. The only thing I knew for sure was that she needed to be far away. I wouldn't risk one of the newborns catching her scent. Give it your best shot, Jasper said, bringing me back to the moment as he filled his mind with an array of fighting techniques. He lunged toward me, and I smiled, already confident in his first move. I easily dodged his first attack, then came at him from behind, only to have him sidestep me at the last moment. He turned and ran straight toward me, his mind screaming, "Bank left!" But I knew the tenor of his voice so well, his lie was obvious. When he realized that telling me the wrong move wasn't going to work, he tried to force himself not to think at all. His fighting became more primal, more instinctual, but no matter how hard he tried to keep his mind out of it, I could always see what his next move would look like in the moment before he made it. "What I wouldn't give to battle you in a fair fight," he complained as I dodged yet another hit. Speaking of which, I couldn't help but laugh as I felt the wave of calm he was attempting to send my direction. "You wish," I chuckled, taking another snap at him. "It was worth a try." "Not that I want to interrupt the party," Carlyle said, clearing his throat, "but I believe the wolves are getting restless." Jasper and I laughed. I had been having so much fun with him, I had forgotten all about the wolves. "Back to work," I sighed. "We'll call it a draw." "I was taking it easy on you so you wouldn't look bad in front of Bella," he added with a smirk. Sure he was. "I suppose there's no putting it off any longer," Carlyle thought sadly. He was the only one not looking forward to combat training. Jasper tried to keep his session with Carlyle very practical and methodical. He taught him the most essential tactics and nothing more, knowing how difficult it was for Carlyle to be fighting at all. It went against everything he stood for. The entire time, Carlyle kept repeating, "Necessary, have to protect my family." When Rosalie's turn came, she was distracted, so Jasper taught her about focus and using all of her senses to keep alert. "They won't hesitate for a second, so you'll have to be ready at all times," he instructed. "Though our numbers are good, we have to be ready for the possibility of simultaneous attacks. Always be watching, listening, feeling where the newborns are around you. They won't be subtle, so as long as you're paying attention, they won't be able to catch you off guard." I was surprised at how enthusiastic Esme was. She was so much like Carlyle in so many ways. I was expecting her to be as apprehensive as he was, but she was eager to learn everything she could. Throughout her training, she tried to remain confident, but occasionally I heard fear creep into her mind. She worried about her children. She even felt concern for the wolves, but mostly she worried about Carlyle being too hesitant.
What if he gets hurt because of his unwillingness to kill?
It soon became clear to me that her determination to fight as hard and as strong as possible was because she was expecting Carlyle not to. If the moment came when she feared for his safety, she would do whatever was necessary to protect him. When Emmett stepped up to fight again, I felt Bella lean sleepily against my side. "We're about finished," I whispered, hugging her closer to me. Even the wolves had grown silent, and I knew the evening was coming to an end. Jasper turned to them with a sigh. "We'll be doing this again tomorrow. Please feel welcome to observe again." "Yes," Sam said. "We'll be here." As I repeated his words, I heard another murmur run through the pack. There seemed to be mixed feelings about the necessity of another training session. "Isn't one night with the leeches enough? Are you kidding? This is awesome. I can't believe they're letting us in on all of this." "What are you talking about? All this is a whole lot of training for a fight that's going to be over before we've even had time to have real fun." Speaking of fun, did anyone stop to think what would happen if we accidentally had too much fun? "That's enough," Sam shouted. "My apologies," he continued, eyes locked with mine. "You and your family have been nothing but kind to us today. I believe what Paul was trying to ask was, in the heat of battle, with everything happening so quickly, what if we find it difficult to distinguish between you and the others? Would it be possible to take a moment to familiarize ourselves with your particular sense?" I nodded, taking a deep breath as I turned to my family. "The pack thinks it would be helpful to be familiar with each of our scents, so they don't make mistakes later. If we could all hold very still, it will make it easier for them." "Certainly," Carlyle answered, looking Sam straight in the eye. "Whatever you need." "Everyone on your best behavior," Sam ordered. "Yes." They all collectively agreed as they stepped forward. Sam led the pack, trying not to show his discomfort as he took in our scents one by one. Even he couldn't keep the disgust out of his thoughts, though. "Sickening," he thought, his eyes nearly rolling into the back of his head. The rest of the pack laughed, though they all knew their turn was next. "All right," Jasper thought, glancing in my direction as he watched the wolves warily. "If any of them gets any bright ideas, you'll let me know, right?" I rolled my eyes and nodded. "Way too close for comfort, in my opinion. They'd better be worth it. I mean, we haven't even seen them fight yet." "This is fantastic," Emmett thought, grinning slyly. "Get a whiff of these hairballs." I almost laughed, but at that moment I noticed the look on Bella's face. She was watching the pack closely, obviously intrigued. As her eyes scanned wolf after wolf, I understood what she was doing. It was as clear as if I suddenly had been granted the ability to read her mind. She was looking for Jacob. When she finally spotted him, her eyes widened slightly. A small grin appeared, tugging at the corners of her lips, and I felt my fist clench. I suppose it was foolish of me to think she would be frightened of him. After all, it was in his wolf form that he had once saved her life. Still, I felt a deep, aching pain in my chest as I listened to her laugh light-heartedly at his ridiculous wolf smile. I was expecting Jacob to have some snide remark to punctuate the moment, but his elation at her easy acceptance of him seemed to make him forget my presence. In a way, it was worse. Neither of them were paying the slightest bit of attention to me. They were lost in their own private moment. Jacob stepped out of line and walked over to Bella. It wasn't until he passed by me that it occurred to him I was watching the exchange. "Bet you were wishing she'd be scared, right?" He was trying to infuse his tone with the usual amount of haughtiness, but even he wasn't sure how she would react when he was standing right in front of her. When he was within her reach, he stopped and threw one last glance in my direction. "Enjoying the show, Leech?" It took every ounce of my strength not to lunge for him, but a part of me needed to see how things would play out. Bella's breathing had sped up, and although her predominant expression seemed to be fascination, I could tell there was a bit of nervousness as well. Maybe Jacob would push her just slightly beyond what she was ready for. It wouldn't be the first time he had dug his own grave where Bella's comfort level was concerned. I watched as Jacob crouched down, lowering himself until he was eye level with her.
"Jacob?"
she whispered, and he grunted his affirmation. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out to touch his face. "Bella," he sighed, and his eyes closed. He was practically purring. As Bella continued to stroke his fur, Jacob regained his senses. His eyes were locked with hers, but his thoughts were directed at me. "I know you told me to wait for her to ask, but is it technically a kiss if I don't have lips?" Before I had time to stop him, Jacob was licking Bella. Licking her! I was about to fulfill my promise to break his jaw, but Bella shouted,
"Ew, gross, Jake!"
and she smacked him in the face. At least she didn't appear to have hurt her hand this time. The two of them were laughing as my family watched in horror.
"So disgusting," Alice thought. "That smell will never come out. She's going to have to burn that outfit. Not that it's much of a loss."
"You gonna let him lick your girl like that?" Emmett added, clearly only half teasing. It wasn't only my family who was having a difficult time understanding the scene in front of them. The rest of the pack had stopped in their tracks, momentarily forgetting that they were supposed to be memorizing our scents. "Dude, so uncalled for. She's hanging out with vamps and you're practically marking her. Give it up, Jake." Then Sam's voice rose above them all. "We're finished here. Everyone should return home. It's imperative that we rest if we're going through this ordeal again tomorrow night." The wolves were more than ready to obey, though I could hear that his words were not a command. He hadn't been using the same tone as when he was speaking as their alpha. I had to admit, the nuances of the pack were fascinating. As they all turned to leave, I realized Jacob was still firmly in place. 2 other wolves were waiting near the edge of the clearing, urging him to join them. "I'll meet you guys in a few minutes," he told them. "There's something I need to take care of first." I let out a deep sigh. I didn't remember what it felt like to be exhausted, but I was fairly certain this was as close as a vampire could get. All I wanted to do was take Bella home and let her fall asleep in my arms, even if it was only for an hour or 2. I didn't know how much more of Jacob I could take without doing something I would really regret. "Ready to go?" I asked Bella, taking her hand. "Not so fast. We have to figure out what we're doing with Bella during the fight, and don't you dare pretend you haven't been thinking about it. Are you taking her somewhere?" "I've not quite figured out all the details yet." "Leave her with me. Hate me all you want, but you know I'd protect her." "It's more complicated than that. Don't concern yourself. I'll make sure it's safe."
"What are you talking about?"
Bella asked, irritated. I felt guilty. I knew she hated to feel left out, but until I knew where I was taking her, I didn't want her to worry about it. "Just discussing strategy," I said gently. "No," Jacob said, his eyes racing back and forth between Bella and I. "I'm sick and tired of you not telling her things because you think it's for her own good. This is Bella's life too, you know. She has a right to be involved. If you can't manage to see that, then I'm going to talk to her for you." Before I could say another word, he was running off into the trees.
"Wait!"
Bella shouted after him.
"Why did he leave?"
she asked dismally. It killed me to hear the disappointment in her voice. "He's coming back," I assured her. "He wants to be able to talk for himself." In less than a minute's time, Jacob was jogging back to us, very much human, and very upset. "Okay, bloodsucker, what's so complicated about it?" "I have to consider every possibility. What if someone gets by you?" He laughed humorlessly. "You seem to have forgotten that we were born to kill vampires. We are always ready for them, and there is no way one of them is getting by me." I shook my head defiantly. "Okay, so leave her on the reservation," he conceded. "We're making Cullen and Brady stay behind anyway. She'll be safe there."
"Are you talking about me?"
Bella asked, her voice scathing. "I just want to know what he plans to do with you during the fight," Jacob replied.
"Do with me?"
"You can't stay in Forks, Bella." She seemed furious, but she had to have known this was coming. There was absolutely no way she was staying anywhere near this fight. "They know where to look for you there. What if someone slips by us?"
"Charlie,"
she said, choking on his name. "He'll be with Billy," Jacob promised her. "If my dad has to commit murder to get him there, he'll do it. Probably it won't take that much. It's Saturday, right? There's a game." I could have strangled Jacob then and there.
"This Saturday?"
she shrieked. I hoped to talk to her about the timing of it all later, privately, when I could comfort her and assure her that we were completely ready. I stared at Bella, waiting for the panic to set in.
"Well, crap, there goes your graduation present,"
she said, and I couldn't hold in my laughter. My Bella, still worried about all the wrong things. "It's the thought that counts," I promised her gently. "You can give the tickets to someone else."
"Angela and Ben,"
she said quickly, seemingly content with her decision.
"At least that will get them out of town."
I reached out to stroke her cheek gently. "You can't evacuate everyone. Hiding you is just a precaution. I told you. We'll have no problem now. There won't be enough to keep us entertained." She glared at me, either still unconvinced or upset that I was once again making light of the fight. "But what about keeping her in the push?" Jacob repeated. "You're just being stubborn, you know. She'd be perfectly safe." "She's been back and forth too much," I reminded him. Maybe he was underestimating the tracking abilities of whoever was in charge of this army. They had her scent. They'd memorized it. She's left trails all over the place. Alice only sees very young vampires coming to the hunt, but obviously someone has created them. There is someone more experienced behind this. Whoever he... I stopped, remembering how convinced Bella was that Victoria was behind it, and added, or she. This could all be a distraction. Alice will see if he decides to look for himself, but we could all be very busy at the time the decision is made. Maybe someone is counting on that. My biggest fear in all of this was that Alice would see someone deciding to go after Bella, but not being able to do anything to stop it. If it was in my power, of course I would leave the fight to protect her, but what if I couldn't get away in time? "I can't leave her somewhere she's been frequently," I repeated. "She has to be hard to find, just in case. It's a long shot, but I'm not taking any chances." Bella was staring at me as I spoke, absolute terror in her eyes. She was so convinced that she had this all figured out. I could almost hear her imagining Victoria cornering her while my family and I fought the newborns. "Just being overcautious," I assured her. But she appeared unconvinced. "So hide her here," Jacob said, pointing toward the forest. His mind wandering through countless locations he apparently deemed remote enough to stop a vampire. Perhaps we hadn't demonstrated our abilities well enough. "There's a million possibilities. Places either one of us can go in just a few minutes if there was a need." I shook my head, frustrated that he wasn't understanding. I thought he was as concerned over her safety as I was, but now it sounded like he wanted to drop her off in the first random patch of woods he could find. Her scent is too strong, and combined with mine, especially distinct. "Please spare me the details," he said, cringing as he thought of Bella clutching tightly in my arms. I might have been amused, but I was too busy trying to make him see the necessity of Bella leaving Forks. "Even if I carried her," I continued, "it would leave a trail. Our trace is all over the range, but in conjunction with Bella's scent, it would catch their attention. We're not sure exactly which path they'll take, because they don't know yet. If they cross her scent before they find us..." That did it. That sentence brought the image I had been fearing all along to the forefront of Jacob's mind. He pictured, all too clearly, the entire army chasing Bella's scent, their eyes blood red, and their maker commanding them to strike without mercy. Neither of us could keep the horror out of our expressions. "You see the difficulties," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm starting to," he admitted silently, not wanting to add to the fear we were both seeing on Bella's face. "There has to be a way to make it work. There has to be somewhere those filthy bloodsuckers couldn't find her, somewhere we could be sure they wouldn't go." I listened as he shuffled through all the areas of the forest I had already thought of and decided against. There were paths that seemed unlikely they would take, but nothing we could be certain of. Even if Alice saw them choose a path, that too might be a diversion, and they could change at the last moment. We were both silent until I started to feel Bella stumble at my side. I hugged her tightly to me and whispered, "I need to get you home. You're exhausted, and Charlie will be waking up soon." "Wait a sec," Jacob interrupted. "My scent disgusts you, right?" "That's putting it mildly." "Would my scent gross out those other leeches enough to cover up Bella's scent?" Not a bad idea." I watched as Jacob pictured himself running Bella into the middle of nowhere, careful not to let her touch anything.
It's possible. I turned to my family and called, "Jasper." He looked up, almost grateful as they joined us. "I hope whatever you two need will distract Alice. She's going crazy here." I was sorry Alice was having difficulties, but I didn't have time to worry too much about it. Jacob had actually managed to stumble onto a possible solution, one that meant I wouldn't have to run Bella out of town, and I was eager to test his theory. "Okay, Jacob," I said, allowing him to explain. Instead of telling Bella his plan, however, he smiled at her and opened his arms. Was he expecting her to just throw herself at him? "I'll try not to enjoy myself too much, but I can't promise anything." It was an effort to remain silent. Bella's hesitant expression, however, did manage to suppress whatever lingering feelings of resentment I was feeling. She wasn't going to be any happier with this part of the plan than I was. "We're going to see if I can confuse the sun enough to hide your trail," Jacob told her, unconsciously opening his arms a little wider. He was trying not to let me hear how disappointed he was that Bella appeared so unwilling to go to him. "You're going to have to let him carry you, Bella," I explained. She was still eyeing him warily, and Jacob rolled his eyes. "Don't be such a baby," he complained, and scooped her up. "And you," he added, glancing at me for a split second, "don't look so smug." I ignored him, turning my attention to Jasper. Bella's scent is so much more potent to me. I thought it would be a fairer test if someone else tried. "Of course," he nodded, as Jacob and Bella took off. It was all I could do not to listen, but my patience was at its end for the day, and I didn't want to risk hearing something that would push me too far. "You probably don't want to hear about what he's feeling right now, right?" Jasper asked sarcastically. "Not unless you want the wolf count to be down one." "He does smell revolting. You know you owe me for this one." "I know, and I don't like a single thing about this situation, but I don't know what else to do. There's nowhere else I can think of that will guarantee her safety." "Then I've got your back, brother." "Thank you." We waited the brief time it took Jacob to make his circle, and when we saw them re-enter the clearing, Jasper took off to follow the trail. I ran to the edge of the woods to wait for him, and less than a minute later he and Alice joined us.
"Why is he still holding her?"
Alice asked, glaring at Jacob.
"If you want, I can make him put her down."
We all watched as Bella very defiantly stormed away from Jacob, which was more satisfying than anything Alice could have done to him. She took my hand, squeezing it tightly as she asked Jasper,
"Well?"
"As long as you don't touch anything, Bella, I can't imagine someone sticking their nose close enough to that trail to catch your scent. It's almost completely obscured." "Almost?" Alice must have read the concern on my face, because she added,
"A definite success. Remember, no matter how many pieces of her clothing they sniff, we will always know Bella's scent better than those newborns, and we could barely pick it up. You have nothing to worry about."
"And it gave me an idea," Jasper said.
"Which will work,"
Alice promised, watching the whole scene play out. She saw Bella using her scent to lead the newborn straight to us. It was absolutely perfect, and gave us control over what we had considered our biggest wild card, not knowing which direction they would come from. "Clever," I complimented Jasper. "How do you stand that?" Jacob asked Bella, who was still obviously very irritated with him. "You're going to leave a false trail in the clearing, Bella. The newborns are hunting. Your scent will excite them, and they'll come exactly where we want them to, without being careful about it. Alice can already see that this will work. When they catch our scent, they'll split up and try to come at us from two sides. Half will go through the forest, where her vision suddenly disappears." "Yes!" Jacob shouted, understanding at once what that meant. In an instant, he could imagine the way the whole fight would play out. I found myself smiling at his excitement. He was picturing fighting alongside of us, fighting against a common enemy, and as unlikely as this alliance had once seemed, he was actually looking forward to it. Man, if her scent is going to drive them that crazy, just imagine how messed up they would be if Bella was really here. "Not a chance," I spat at Jasper, and his eyes widened apologetically. I know, I didn't even really consider it. Not really."
"Sure you didn't,"
Alice thought sourly, stomping on his foot.
"That's why I saw a 2-second version of the whole brilliant idea."
"If Bella was actually here in the clearing," Jasper explained, trying to defend himself. It would drive them insane. They wouldn't be able to concentrate on anything but her. It would make picking them off truly easy. I shot him a warning glance. It would be best for all of us if he didn't finish that sentence. Of course it's too dangerous for her. It was just an errant thought. You should know by now that you might not like everything you hear. You can't blame me for thinking through every possibility. As he thought it, though, I caught him glancing at Bella again, and I had to silence my growl. "No," I said firmly. "You're right. I'm really sorry. Really. You know I'd never let anything happen to her." I forced a nod as he and Alice took off for another round of practice. "Best 2 out of 3?" He was laughing, and Jacob groaned. "Nice family," he thought, seething. "Really putting Bella's safety first." "Jasper looks at things from a military perspective," I told him, suddenly feeling defensive, though even I had been furious with Jasper only moments before. "He looks at all the options. It's thoroughness, not callousness." "Right. Awesome strategy. Why didn't I think of using Bella as bait?" I rolled my eyes, unwilling to waste another moment on Jacob. I was ready to be done with the whole evening. "I'll bring her here Friday afternoon to lay the false trail. You can meet us afterwards and carry her to the place I know. Completely out of the way and easily defensible. Not that it would come to that. I'll take another route there." "And then what? Leave her with a cell phone?" "You have a better idea?" I snapped, losing my last ounce of patience. "Actually, I do," he smiled. "Oh?" I waited while he ran through his plan. Jacob had just found a very important job for one of the pack's younger, more determined members. "Again, dog, not bad at all." "We tried to talk Seth into staying behind with the younger 2, Jacob told Bella. "He's still too young, but he's stubborn, and he's resisting. So I thought of a new assignment for him. Cell phone." Bella gave him a half smile, but her eyes betrayed her confusion. "As long as Seth Clearwater is in wolf form, he'll be connected to the pack," I explained before turning back to Jacob. "Distance isn't a problem?" "Nope." Likely trying to hold on to one of the pack's trade secrets, he didn't seem overly anxious to elaborate. It didn't matter, though. He couldn't stop himself from remembering a time when the pack had tested its limits. 300 miles. That's impressive. "Don't you ever feel like a jerk just leaving her out of the conversation like that?" he asked, turning to Bella with a sigh. "That's the farthest we've ever experimented. Still clear as a bell," he told her smugly. "It's a good idea," I finally said. As hard as it was to think about leaving Bella with a wolf, of all creatures, I couldn't argue with their ability to protect her, and I liked the knowledge that I could get to her quickly if something went wrong. It also meant she would be in my arms that much sooner when this whole ordeal was over with. I'll feel better with Seth there, even without the instantaneous communication. I don't know if I'd be able to leave Bella there alone. To think it's come to this, though, trusting werewolves. "Fighting with vampires instead of against them," he agreed incredulously. "Well, you still get to fight against some of them," I reminded him. Jacob smiled, his mind filled with visions of vampires being torn apart, and his eyes filled with excitement. "That's the reason we're here,"